We now take a look at a couple of problems from the text. The first one, problem 471, is a conceptual problem. Here we're given two forces applied to A and B, and we are asked to determine whether or not the expressions given for moments are valid under the two conditions, first where A and B are not a couple, and then secondly where A and B are a couple. Take a moment now to pause this video and see if you can determine which of these is true or false. Resume playing when you're ready to hear a discussion. Okay, so let's take these one at a time. We'll start with the first row. We're given an expression for a moment about C as RCA cross FA plus RCB cross FB. That is certainly true if FA and FB are not a couple. It is also true if FA and FB are a couple. In our introduction to the couple, we took a moment about C just like this and used the fact that RCB was equal to RCA plus RAB, and then used the equal and opposite forces to eliminate the original position vectors that reference the point C. But it's still a valid definition. It doesn't matter whether the pair FA and FB are not a couple or whether they are a couple. It's true in both instances. The second statement says that the moment about C is equal to RAB cross FB. That is not true if the forces are not a couple. It is true if they are a couple, because you'll recall that the moment due to a couple is a free vector. We could evaluate the moment based on the relative position vector I've shown here. We could write this as RAB cross FB, but that moment is valid at any position on the body, including C, so it is a true statement if FA and FB are a couple. Similarly, we have in the third row, the moment about C is equal to RBA cross FA. For the same reason that this is false and true respectively in the second row, it's also false and true respectively in this row. The moment about C would not be RBA cross FA if FA and FB are not a couple, but because a couple is a free vector, it would be true if FA and FB are a couple. Our fourth statement is that the moment about A is equal to RAB cross FB. This is true whether FA and FB are a couple or not. The line of action of FA goes through A, so it doesn't contribute any moment about A. The only contribution to a moment about A comes from FB, so it would be correct to say that the moment about A is RAB cross FB, whether FA and FB together constitute a couple or not. So this is going to be true in both cases. Finally, our last statement is that the moment about D is equal to RCA cross FA plus RCB cross FB. So we're back to our expression that we had in the very first row. Again, this is not going to be true if FA and FB are not a couple. We would have to write RDA cross FA plus RDB cross FB. But it is going to be true if FA and FB are a couple, because it doesn't matter where our reference point is if they're a couple. We could choose any point we like on the body and get the same result, which is also why the couple is a free vector. For our second problem, we have a structure built in at O that supports 70 and 85 Newton couples as well as a tip moment. We want to determine the resultant couple moment, and in the problem statement it says using both the scalar and the vector approaches. So because this is a three-dimensional problem, I would not recommend a scalar approach for these forces. They have orientations that are such that they have non-zero components in each of their three directions, and it will just be much easier if we confine ourselves to the vector approach for this problem. So I'm just going to make a note of that. It's 3D, so I'm going to use a vector approach. Because these are three couples, they're going to have the same influence about any point at the body. So this is just the resultant moment, which holds everywhere. And we could choose, for instance, to write this as RAB cross the force at B plus RCD cross the force at D plus the tip moment ME. We might just note from this figure that the rise over run of these three-dimensional orientations is going to give us unit vectors that work out very nicely as fractions. If we take the magnitude of these resultants based on a 2, 3, 6 prism or an 8, 9, 12 prism, the diagonal across that is going to turn out to be a nice integer number. So it's going to turn out to be 7 for these 2, 3, 6, 7 orientations, and it's going to turn out to be 17 for these 8, 9, 12 orientations. That'll make our unit vectors work out very nicely. So we'll say that RAB cross FB is equal to minus 2 meters in K crossed into 70 newtons, and the orientation at B is a unit vector that would be minus 6/7 I plus 3/7 J minus 2/7 K. This fractional representation also works out nicely because 7 goes into 70, obviously 10 times, and we end up with 120 Newton meters on K cross I minus 60 Newton meters on K cross J. Using the fact that K cross J is minus I and K cross I is plus J, we end up with 60I plus 120J Newton meters. For RCD cross FD, we have 2J meters crossed into 85 newtons on a unit vector that's minus 8 over 17I minus 12 over 17J and plus 9 over 17K. Once again, this works out nicely because 17 goes into 85 5 times, and we end up with minus 80 Newton meters on J cross I and plus 90 Newton meters on J cross K. And once again, J cross K is plus I and J cross I is minus K, so we end up with 90I plus 80K Newton meters. So our resultant moment is just the sum of these contributions. We can see that the tip moment at E is 200 Newton meters in the minus I direction, so we simply have 60I plus 120J plus 90I plus 80K minus 200I Newton meters, and that gives us a value that's equal to minus 50I plus 120J plus 80K Newton meters.